Good morning. Welcome to First Parish in Milton. My name is Jenny Mulqueen, and I am a member of the worship committee. First Parish is a vibrant, welcoming congregation that welcomes all people to grow deep faith and take bold action. We're so glad that you are here with us today. This sanctuary is made holy by your presence. If you are joining us for the first time, please take a welcome packet from the pew rack. There's information about our services and our childcare. If you fill out the yellow card inside the packet and drop it into the offering plate, you'll receive our weekly email newsletter, which can help you to get us to know us better. The greeters and ushers in the back are wearing colorful name tags, and they'll be standing by the doors after worship is over. Please see them after church, and they can walk to social hour or answer any of your questions. We strive to make our worship experience accessible to people of all ages and abilities. The welcome card in your pew provides information on this, or you can speak with an usher. The work of living our faith is done both in and out of worship, so I draw your attention to the printed announcements that came inside your order of worship. These announcements are important news of our community life, so please take a look. We have just one additional announcement this morning from our membership chair.
Good morning, everyone. We're getting ready for transitioning into our summer programming here at First Parish, and one of the things that I have learned over the last few weeks is that a number of our regular greeters are going to be away for large parts of the summer. So I am putting out an appeal to the general populace that if any of you expect that you're going to be coming to some of the summer services and would be willing to take on a greeter role, I would be happy to talk with you a little bit about that if you find me after social hour. Also, if there are any folks who are interested in, especially among those who've been in the congregation for 2, 3, 4 years, in joining the membership committee, we'd really like to have some folks who are relatively new to the church. It's not heavy lifting, but if you're interested in that, please see me in social hour. Thank you.
Extending a generous welcome is a spiritual practice. I invite you all to extend that welcome to your neighbors by taking a few minutes to greet them.
Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing our opening hymn, number 65, The Sweet June Days.
Sweet
Our opening words come from beloved poet who passed away this week, Maya Angelou. A brave and startling truth. We, this people, on a small and lonely planet, traveling through casual space, past aloof stars, across the way of indifferent suns, to a destination where all signs tell us it is possible and imperative that we learn a brave and startling truth. And when we come to it, to the day of peacemaking, when we release our fingers from fists of hostility and allow the pure, cool air to cool our palms, we, this people on this small and drifting planet, whose hands can strike with such abandon that in a twinkling life is sapped from the living. Yet those same hands can touch with such healing, irresistible tenderness that the haughty neck is happy to bow and the proud back is glad to bend. Out of such chaos, out of such contradiction, we learn that we are neither devils nor divines. When we come to it, we, this people on this wayward floating body, created on this earth, of this earth, have the power to fashion for the earth a climate where every man and every woman can live freely, without sanctimonious piety, without crippling fear. When we come to it, we must confess that we are the possible, we are the miraculous, the true wonder of this world. That is when, and only when, we come to it. We miraculous, true wonders of this world tell many of our truths in stories. And this morning we have a story for you from Syria called True Worth. It's a classic tale, retold and adapted by Sarah Conover and Frida Crane. Now, stories in much of the Middle East begin, instead of with once upon a time, with there was and there was not, or once there was and twice there wasn't. This story begins, Khan Yaman Khan, once there was and there was not, a powerful sultan who yearned to make his kingdom the most honest in the world. Consulting with his chief judge, called a wazir, the sultan hatched what he thought would be the perfect plan. The very next day, the sultan's crier was sent from one end of the kingdom to the other, from the crowded city market to the farthest pasture, announcing a strict new policy of absolute honesty.
Anyone caught telling a lie will face the stiffest fines from the sultan. This policy is effective today. Immediately.
The next part of the sultan's plan called for a little spying. Disguising themselves as travelers, the sultan and his wazir planned their first visit. They chose the richest merchant in the city. As is the custom in the Muslim world, the travelers were warmly welcomed in the merchant's home. The men settled onto cushions, and out came trays laden with dates and figs and sweet, steaming tea. Graciously serving his guests, the merchant awaited any questions they might have.
Excuse me, sir, but you look quite youthful for being so very successful. Exactly how old are you?
The merchant hesitated, but then replied,
I've had 20 wonderful years. Alhamdulillah, thanks be to Allah.
Seeing that the merchant was well past 20 years, the Sultan glanced briefly at his wazir, thinking that he had already snagged the first liar.
And how many children do you have, sir?
I have a single praiseworthy son.
Having heard of the merchant's many sons, the Sultan felt more and more sure of the merchant's dishonesty. He boldly probed,
And how much wealth have you accumulated in your years?
The merchant, still the polite host, politely answered,
For Allah's sake, I have 70,000 dinars.
Now, this was a great deal of money, yet not the full amount the merchant was reputed to have. In silence, the disguised men winked at each other, anticipating that the rich merchant would make the perfect example of dishonesty for the rest of the kingdom. But they had to be very sure. They had to check the records after the visit. So the Sultan and the Wazir continued their charade for the time being. The three men discussed the state of the surrounding lands and notable things of the times. Several pots of tea later, the conversation wound to an end. The Sultan and his Wazir stood and thanked the merchant for his generous hospitality and hastened back to the palace to check their facts. Sure enough, the records proved a very different account than the merchant's words. The Wazir dispatched 2 soldiers to bring the merchant to face charges for breaking the new law. Surrounded by the council and his Wazir, the Sultan sat proudly at the head of the palace court, anticipating the success of this new edict. The merchant was brought before them, appearing somewhat confused at his predicament. The Sultan began.
You have broken the law of the land with your brazen dishonesty. It was I to whom you so graciously fed sweets and tea while you told a string of lies. You said you were only 20 years old, but the kingdom's records show that you are 70. You told us how you have just one single son, but the records prove you have 6. And finally, you declared your value to be 70,000 dinars, while the court records show that you are by far the second richest man in the kingdom. We need to show the people we are serious about our new law by jailing this man and fining him the maximum penalties.
The merchant looked surprised at these accusations, but not shaken.
Your Majesty, may I reply to these charges?
The Sultan, quite certain of himself and impatient to mete out the first punishment, reluctantly nodded yes.
By Allah, I have told you nothing but the truth. You asked me my age, and I answered that I have had 20 good years. That is because my first 20 years were my happiest. You asked how many children I have, and I answered that I have only one praiseworthy son, a single son who loves Allah and lives by God's laws. All my other sons are drunks who contribute nothing to the welfare of others.
The merchant bowed his head in shame.
And lastly, you asked me of my wealth. I replied that for Allah's sake I had saved 70,000 dinars. 70,000 is the amount of money that I paid to have the town mosque built, where people come to worship and where the poor are fed. I have no real true wealth but what I have given to others.
The merchant stood humbly before the court, letting his words take their effect. At last, the Sultan spoke up gently, with an apology.
The merchant is right, of course. There is no time more happily remembered than when our spirit is full of love. There is no child closer to our hearts than the child who acts honorably. And there is nothing of value on this earth which is not done for God's sake.
Here ends our story. Our children and their facilitators will leave for their classes to continue to explore the truths we share as we sing Walking with You. The search for truth and meaning. That has defined our faith tradition for quite a long time, as has the idea that revelation is continuous, not closed in a single book of scripture that we must return to, but something that we can experience through our daily living and through seeing those old texts anew. I think of that often as I reflect on the news of the week, and especially this week, although you could have picked any number of weeks from the last few years, as our nation has reeled from news of horrific crime. And in the wake of it, we keep looking for that single thing that is the truth about what made this happen. The one thing that if we solved it, if we changed a policy or people's hearts, would eliminate the terrible violence. This week we were gifted with that alongside memorials of the incredible life of Maya Angelou. Someone who lived a full and rich life, a life of truth-telling, a life of survival against great odds, a life that celebrated the truth of each of our lives and all of their imperfections as blessings, as windows to the divine. She said exactly that, in fact. With all of the information and opinion freely floating in the world, it's tempting to want to take the tack of that sultan, to decree all lies to be banned, all falsehoods ruled out, to dwell in the simplicity and the clarity of the truth. It was all about gun control. That's what we need. It's all about mental health. That's what we need, mental health care. It's all about misogyny. If we cured that, it would all be over. But if we treat truth as if it's a single, fixed, knowable commodity, and then go out and try to catch people in their falsehoods, when we're surrounded by the din of so much conflict, it can be tempting to lose hope, to dig our heels into our own position or the way that we're accustomed to hearing truth spoken, and shut down to all of those things that flow underneath the surface. We might feel powerless to make the changes needed ourselves, powerless to even know what thing might be the cure, what thing really is the truth. But I want to offer a testimonial this morning to something we already know about how to make space for that truth that's known as a continually unfolding story, that we might tell in different words, that we might answer questions with different perspectives, but might be able to discover right here as the ground beneath our feet, especially here on this holy ground that has housed this spiritual community for centuries. We know that sacred ground in our closest relationships. When we realize that those we love sometimes see the world very differently than we do, and sometimes that's comical, as in, how pictures should be arranged on the wall, or how often we ought to change the bed linen, or whether or not it's necessary to brush our teeth every morning, as with some of our children. In our best moments, we can see that though their behavior might be driving us nuts, our children or our parents aren't actually setting out to do that most of the time. They're simply acting out of a different experience, a different way of seeing the world, and they're figuring out how to navigate it too. We work hard to make those things work in those close relationships, from the smallest details to the largest values. We already have a discipline of seeing and naming and honoring truth with those nearest and dearest. With them, we seek that who it is that's telling the truth, as in, what happened here? What made you do that? What were you thinking? Isn't a zero-sum game of fact or fiction, but an unfolding story that has layers and texture, and it's a life's work to uncover. Though we might be frustrated sometimes, we're also often awed at how they might have come to what they did. When we're already invested, we take that time, and we learn to see things in a whole new way. What would it take for us to build the practice of offering that same grace to total strangers, folks we haven't chosen to make a life with or given birth to or adopted? What if we considered it our call in the world to unfold those alternative perspectives and values? Those ones that we would never think of ourselves and open up whole new worlds for us. Whose truth matters is the battleground that we're in the midst of all the time lately. The stories of Yes All Women that came out in the last week in response to the killings in Isla Vista were a great sign of this. We're living with untold experiences, these experiences that women were sharing of misogynistic messages and overtones that came all the time. And all of a sudden, there was an event where it felt like voices could be heard, voices that everyone held internally for too long. And I wonder, in the midst of hearing all of that and crying over it and feeling overwhelmed by it, what if we had those practices all the time? And as I was thinking about that, imagining a world where we could have those practices, I had a little bit of a, duh moment. As I said, we've done that so many times in this church community. It's become a practice here that I'm so proud of, that I look to you all to continue. We began it many years ago as we asked ourselves, what does it mean to be a member of this religious community? We knew that we had these words of a covenant that belonged to us, but a lot of people kind of apologized for them, said they weren't exactly who we were. And so we began this process of conversation. And first we came up with the words we now use as our call to worship. And then, many years later, we came up with a new covenant entirely. We kept speaking our truths of what we valued about each other, what we had learned in this religious community together, and we kept crafting new ways to express them, new ways to talk to each other about what was deepest and most real for us. And I want you to know that every Sunday this happens in our religious education program. It happens with the children at the smallest ages as they look at stories and explore them and share what they mean to them, do their own enactment of what it might be like to be a character in that story, and then explore what ways they could express their feelings about that story or the feelings they might have as that character in our Spirit Play program. And as they get a little older, they get a little more involved in navigating the moral truths that are there. And further and further, they delve into what it means to be a spiritual person living in this world where so little is told as a structured, real truth. How do we keep making meaning for ourselves and our world? How do we keep navigating this complicated moral territory that we have to negotiate all the time? And we do that here in worship, and we do it as adults in small group ministries. Every time this community has gotten into those conversations, and they haven't been easy conversations by any means, exploring what might it mean to be a bold community trying out something new in the world through our conversations about the temple, I've been so proud of the ways that we have listened to each other, of the ways that people have told their sometimes fearfully minority truths to a community that might not have agreed, but still stayed in the struggle. Let themselves be heard, let others be heard with them, and made decisions that might have been absolutely fulfilling and satisfying or absolutely disappointing, and still stayed together. Return to this community to be in conversation, to be in celebration, and to understand something deeper about each of our own journeys. And I've watched you do this as well. As friends, as neighbors, as fellow church members who might not have known each other that well, celebrating that someone else's truth might be utterly unknowable to us, but we do hold it as their truth, and valid and important for that as well. I have watched you all in different ways. Let your own hearts, your own spirits be changed by the light of another's truth, by walking together prayerfully, faithfully, into a whole new world that has space for all of the truths that we hold. Some of you have heard me repeat over and over again, and this came up for me again as we were exploring the Leap of Faith program this year, that truth is an eternal conversation about things that matter, conducted with passion and discipline. Those are the words of Parker Palmer. He talks about truth as that conversation, putting together the most honest and true parts of ourselves, sharing their wisdom with each other, weaving together the truth that's most abiding and comes from a source greater than us all. God's own truth, as you might say. Passion and discipline are a little bit harder, aren't they? Finding time for those conversations, returning to those conversations when the list of to-dos is a mile long and you know the conversation might not be easy. Wouldn't it be a lot easier to go out and do your gardening instead of coming to church on Sunday morning? Wouldn't it be easier to do any number of things? We want to be here together. We want to discover that deepening truth. And I am so proud of this community for being a place where that deeper truth is lifted up and celebrated and sought after again and again and again. Because when we're listening to each other, we're listening to that deeper teacher. And offering this kind of attention, which I know I've talked about before, but I think is the most beautiful image, again from Parker Palmer, of holding each other's souls as we are in conversation with each other, like a bird held in our palms of our two hands. Now we're tempted when we're holding something as fragile and delicate and beautiful as a bird, a truth, to want to hold it tightly. But if we hold it too tightly, what happens? We stifle it, we can kill it. The other temptation is to want to flee from the responsibility and let it go. To walk away out of embarrassment or shame or just being completely overwhelmed with the task of holding it. Our task together in this community is to hold it lightly, to create that gentle ground on which it can land, where it can find home and safe rest, in which it can find healing and its voice. And then we see what comes when all of these birds have that safe landing place together. When we offer each other that full attention, we can offer a guide rope through the wild storms of this world, through those competing truths that all are true on some level and none are true on another, that help our hidden teachers, our inner teachers, show themselves, help each other live lives of wholeness, healing, and joy, help carve those paths to make it possible for communities far beyond our own. I pray that in the time to come, you'll continue to trust that most profound truth, that there will be no failure if you are true to yourselves and to each other, true to the world in which you find yourselves and the pain and struggles there, as well as the joys and celebrations you can't wait to sing praises for. There will be no irrevocable loss if we hold fast to the truth that Maya Angelou speaks in her poem that was our opening words. When we come to it, we, this people on this wayward floating body created on this earth, of this earth, have the power to fashion for this earth a climate where every man and every woman can live freely, without sanctimonious piety, without crippling fear. When we come to it, we must confess that we are the possible, we are the miraculous, the true wonder of this world. That is when, and only when, we come to it. May we come to it continually, ever present, that truth, those many truths that are the ground beneath our feet. May we lift it up and celebrate it, live it here and in our world. Amen. We enter into prayer with When Our Heart is in a Holy Place, number 1008 in your Teal hymnal. Please join me in prayer. Holy oneness, into this holy place we bring our celebrations and our sorrows, our yearnings, our disappointments, our great victories. We open our hearts for those who are struggling and mourning this day, for those who lost their lives at Hanscom Field last night, for those who are reeling from the violence in Isla Vista. With Jeff, we share sorrow for the 25th anniversary of the slaughter at Tiananmen Square and the hope that totalitarian states are destined not to last. And we hold prayers for all of those whose lives are visited with violence they did not invite and cannot control. And we pray for a space for the bird of each soul to find its full fulfillment on this earth, in community, in lands of peace and justice. For those who are struggling with illness, we also pray. With Dottie and Chris, we lift a prayer for speedy and full recovery for their friend Hal Goldstein. With India, we lift a prayer for her friend Laura, who had a double mastectomy on Friday. For all of those who are struggling with illnesses of mind, body, or spirit, their loved ones, and their caregivers, we pray. And we lift up our joyful celebrations as well. For all of our religious education teachers who gave so much to our young people this year, we give great thanks. And exceeding great thanks for our Religious Education Committee Chair, Jen Leggett, for her leadership, for her vision, for her great spirit, and for her wonderful counsel. For the RE Committee, for all of our church leaders involved in so many important decisions as we move through this time of transition. We lift up our great thanksgiving. And also this morning, we give thanks for those graduating from high school today here in Milton and beyond. Emma Greenewalt, Isabel Gray, Colin McIsaac, Clinton Brown, Juliana Giddings. May their futures be blessed. May they be full of joy and celebration. With our hearts in this holy place, we make space for the voice deep within and offer these moments of silence to share the longings deepest in our hearts. Amen. I've asked our members who made service pledges this year to share testimonials with us this spring. Jen Leggett has this to share.
Except that it's not about my service pledge, sorry.
But it's about something very important. That was my plan. So, I've had a testimony in my head and my heart for some time now. I've thought about doing it last year, and then time got away from me. And then with Paris's departure, it seemed all the more timely. So I signed up. Then, as was the case the last time I testified, it was fairly impossible to translate that vision in my head into what came out on paper. I've written many versions over the last few days. This version, which I like the best, was written this morning at about 6:10. I asked Parish if she ever did that before, like changing the sermon right before, and she said, absolutely not. And then, of course, I forgot one page on the printer, so Dave, my award-winning husband, just dashed home and got it. So it's all here now. Okay. My husband, David, and I have been members of this church for 4+ years. We love it here. This church, this community, our vision, what we talk about, what we do, who you each are, have brought such joy and meaning to my life. I feel like I have found my people. And you are my family. It's going to be funny, I promise. Steve, you just didn't thank me before. Our love grew over time. Don't get me wrong, so much has drew us in instantly, but so many deeper connections and interactions have happened over the years that we are grateful for. And we cherish those and look forward to more. All right, now I can't read because I'm crying. All right. Here I found a way to access and deepen faith and love, ironically, by being told at the door that I didn't have to believe anything. Here I heard that love wins, and heaven may be happening right here, right now, on this earth, between us all. I can get on board with that. And then some. I learned that when my husband got sick with rheumatoid arthritis, and my family and I got really stressed out, you loved us even more. In your own small, large, sneaky, and not so sneaky ways. And here we are, having learned to take better care of ourselves and embracing that, and I think this church had a heavy hand in helping us do that. So, the committee work I have done here has been on the RE committee. I have loved this work, loved it. Mostly for the people on the team who I got to know and who I got to learn from, including our amazing staff members that we've gained greater access to. Robin, James, Molly, Kristen, Miriam, Carissa. We've had fun. We've done great work. We've washed dishes to be sure, and we've enjoyed every saucepan and punch bowl. And some of us are tired and need to move on to do other work, and an incredible array of people are staying to keep on doing the work that is so precious and central to our church and its shortest members. I'm relieved for the break. That was supposed to be funny. All right, you left. I'm relieved for the break. I worked hard. I learned about things I love to do and things I'm not so good at, like keeping a large committee well organized. It's okay. I love my time on the committee and will always help when you need it and bring the Oreo, monster eyeball, and jelly worm cake for the Halloween party. One of the best moments we had as a committee is what I wanted to tell you about. Once upon a time, or maybe 4 times upon a time, we had the staff we worked with change. What we found was we were sad, we worked hard to get excited about the new person, and we worked hard to welcome the new person. And welcome we did. We worked hard with them and started to get things done. But time and time again, our conversations would drift back to what we missed about the old person, to missing, to regretting her loss, to elevating what she did to saint status sometimes, and wishing we had a little more of her in who was sitting before us. And it was hard. We found ourselves unhappy sometimes. Once, on behalf of the committee, I even went and met with Carissa, who I find one of the most supportive people ever, and who I was completely sure would hug me and tell me we were right and tell us to go out and clone the old her. Turns out that's not what happened. She listened, she asked, and she pushed back and even got a little angry. And while the sometimes even childlike part of me was shocked and dismayed, the rest of me loved that response.
I instantly knew she was exactly right. She was telling us we needed to move on and see the gifts that were right before us, waiting for us to accept them if only we would. I took that news back to the committee in subtle ways. We started talking about our missing a little less. I thought about it a whole lot, and I know we all did. And then one day, coming out of a committee meeting, many of us found ourselves in the kitchen washing up from the meal we had just shared. And we found ourselves back in that regretting, missing, not being present. And don't get me wrong, this was not some of us, this was all of us. And I remembered my conversation with Parisa, and I started really asking all of us what we truly missed about the DRE of the past. We were all in an emotional mood. It had been an intense meeting. Many of us had heavy things going on. We had used one another for support, and a couple of tears when we checked in. We were pretty connected at that moment. And what happened, I will always remember. We started thinking about and talking about specifically what we had missed about that person. We missed how much she knew all of our kids and knew when to swoop in and give a little extra church love to those who needed it. She knew each child's name, whose parents were struggling with divorce or worry, and just how to support them, and on and on. Elevated her once again to a saint. But this minute was different. The conversation shifted. Someone said, "Wait a minute. She was wonderful here, but she had also been here 6 years and had a chance to know all of our kids and adults and everyone in between." Someone else said, "What if we're not being fair? New people need a while to get to know everyone, and we can help them." Then another said so excitedly, "What if we did that for each other and for everyone else in the church? We could do that." It was a wonderful moment. We all walked away feeling energized, as if we had just decided there was something new we could start doing from that point on that would help ourselves and each other. It felt so much lighter. Over time, what we all witnessed about this has been even more miraculous. We realized that we had actually always helped with that saintly work, and we're doing it quite well all along. We also had never stopped. We just didn't realize it. And we attributed so much of that work to our DRE. Don't get me wrong. What she did was incredible and so uniquely her, and we are all the better for it. But we were selling ourselves short if we missed the fact that we could and should do that work ourselves with each other. This is a lifelong tension for me. Dealing with change is hard for me, and figuring out who should do what is tricky. What I think we learned is that sometimes we ask too much of others, especially when we are confused about how powerful we ourselves are in getting things taken care of. And then we can overwhelm those folks around us. Speaking for me, just ask my husband. The good news is we are so capable. We can do saint-like work as well. We just have to jump in and do it and believe in ourselves. As we prepare for another near saint to move on and expand her great gifts to the larger world, I think we're going to have some growing pains. I think I'm going to have a hard time not focusing on what Parisa did, how she did it, and clinging to that. I just have to get my prop. I may even do what I have done for a long time, which India so appropriately coined into a bumper sticker. Check in with my "what would Parisa do" part to help make decisions and assessments. So I honestly did order some of these that I thought I would auction off, but Cafe Press hasn't delivered them yet, but you'll be seeing them around, don't you worry. And don't think I'm kidding, because I'm not. I think I might even catch myself feeling sorry for myself that she's not here anymore. I know I'll also work to welcome our new minister, but I know I'll have some inner work to do as well on this. I don't want to shortchange myself or the rest of you in not seeing and witnessing just how much we are to each other as a church. I want you to help me with this, and I want to help you with this too. We'll get through it, and we'll be okay. We might even be wonderful. We are awfully fabulous right now. Let's not forget how strong we all are, and how strong we always were. I can't wait to celebrate and thank Parisa for the miraculous influence she has had on me, my family, and our church. She will always occupy a huge space in my heart as an important family member and an incredible minister. Her gifts are endless and specifically strengthening to me and my family. And at the same time, we are amazing. We are an amazing, incredible, maybe even saint-like community together. I'm so grateful to be here and to know you all. And I'm so grateful you let me speak. Let me do the occasional flash mob. By the way, can you make sure Hank knows that I have that permission? And be my own crazy self. I look forward to walking with you all into our future, doing what we do best, and seeing each other's gifts right there before us, ready for the taking. We can do it. We already have. It's true. Love does win. Thank you.
This is a special community. Give to the offering. Be transformed into strength for this faith community, into comfort, food, and shelter for those in need, and may we be transformed by generosity. You may be seated. One of the pieces of our eternal conversations about things that matter in this community has been our journey around the question of communion, its theological, its spiritual, its practical place in our worship tradition. Our worship committee over the last couple of years has engaged in some experiments with this and have arrived at the decision that this practice does belong to us, and it has been crucial in the ongoing spiritual development and exploration of many of us. So we invite you into this ritual and the liturgy we've developed together in the spirit of inviting in what is to be learned, what is to be healed, what is to be part of your own growth. If that is sitting in your pew and enjoying the music and watching others move around, that is a wonderful place to be. If it is participating a little bit tentatively, that is okay too. If it is wholehearted enjoyment, that is wonderful as well. Please join as you feel moved.